The meeting room on Corvani Prime was filled with the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Commander Zethkar stood at the center, his 6 arms moving gracefully as he pointed to various star charts. The other council members watched with interest as he explained his plan. "The humans have finally reached our space," Zethkar said, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about military matters. "Their ships are slow and crude. Their weapons are basic. They pose no threat to our empire." Council leader Morthak leaned forward in her floating chair. Her ancient eyes had seen the rise and fall of dozens of species. "Then why are we discussing them at all?" Zethkar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Because they could be useful. The humans are eager to learn. They want our technology. We can use this to our advantage." The holographic display changed to show images of human ships. They looked like metal boxes with engines attached. Compared to the sleek organic curves of Corvani vessels, they seemed almost comical. "What do you suggest?" asked another council member. "We give them technology," Zethkar said, "but not our real technology. We give them old equipment, weapons and systems we stopped using hundreds of years ago. We tell them these are our latest designs." The council members made sounds of approval. It was a clever plan. The humans would think they were getting advanced alien technology, but they would only receive outdated equipment that posed no real threat to Corvani forces. "This will keep them happy and busy," Zethkar continued. "While they try to understand our old technology, we can watch them. We can learn about their capabilities. And most importantly, we can make sure they never get access to our real weapons." The vote was quick and unanimous. The deception would begin immediately. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Velkar stood on the bridge of a human space station called Unity Base. The humans had built it at the edge of their solar system as a meeting point for alien visitors. It was crude but functional, much like everything else humans made. Captain James Morrison, the station commander, greeted the ambassador with obvious excitement. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. Like most humans, he seemed genuinely happy to meet an alien species. "Ambassador Velkar," Morrison said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to Unity Base. We're honored by your visit." Velkar touched the human's hand briefly. The gesture felt strange, but he had studied human customs. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. The Corvani Empire is pleased to establish formal relations with humanity." The next few hours were filled with ceremonies and speeches. The humans seemed to hang on every word the ambassador said. They were like children meeting their heroes for the first time. When the formal part was over, Morrison led Velkar to a private meeting room. "Ambassador, if I may ask, our scientists are very curious about your technology. We've heard amazing things about Corvani engineering." This was the moment Velkar had been waiting for. "Of course, Captain. The Empire believes in sharing knowledge with our new friends. As a gesture of goodwill, we would like to offer you some of our technology." Morrison's eyes lit up. "That's incredibly generous. What kind of technology?" "Plasma generators, shield matrices, and weapon systems," Velkar said, trying to sound casual. "Some of our finest equipment." What he didn't mention was that these were systems the Corvani had stopped using 200 years ago. They were reliable but inefficient. Any first-year Corvani engineering student could build better equipment in their sleep. Over the next month, several Corvani ships arrived at Unity Base. They brought containers full of advanced technology. The humans accepted each gift with embarrassing gratitude. Dr. Sarah Chen was put in charge of the human research team studying the alien technology. She was a brilliant scientist with short black hair and intense brown eyes. When she first saw the Corvani plasma generator, she stared at it for a full minute without speaking. "This is incredible," she finally whispered. "Look at the energy patterns. The way they've contained the plasma reaction. It's like nothing we've ever seen." Her team of engineers and scientists crowded around the device. They examined every component with the excitement of children on Christmas morning. They took thousands of photographs and measurements. They created detailed diagrams and computer models. Dr. Chen herself spent 18 hours a day studying the alien equipment. She barely ate or slept. Her colleagues worried about her health, but she was completely absorbed in her work. The Corvani observers watched with amusement. They had expected the humans to be impressed, but this level of excitement was almost comical. These primitive beings were treating outdated Corvani technology like it was the greatest discovery in history. They're like insects studying a computer, one observer reported back to Corvani Prime. They understand so little that they don't even realize how little they understand. But Dr. Chen was not as simple as the Corvani thought. She had been studying alien technology for most of her career, even before humanity had met any aliens. She had always wondered what advanced civilizations might create. As she examined the plasma generator, she began to notice things that seemed odd. The energy conversion process was less efficient than it could be. The containment field had unnecessary complexity that actually reduced performance. The control systems were outdated even by human standards. "Dr. Chen," said one of her assistants, "I think there might be a problem with this design." Chen looked up from her work. "What kind of problem?" "Well, if I'm reading this correctly, this plasma generator is only converting about 30% of its fuel into usable energy. Our best fusion reactors do better than that." Dr. Chen frowned. She had noticed the same thing but had assumed she was missing something. "Show me your calculations." For the next several hours, the team went over their analysis again and again. The conclusion was always the same. The Corvani technology was impressive in some ways, but it was also inefficient and outdated. Dr. Chen felt a strange mixture of disappointment and excitement. Disappointment because the alien technology wasn't as advanced as she had hoped. Excitement because if she could understand the principles behind it, she might be able to improve it. "What do you think, Dr. Chen?" asked her assistant. "Should we report this to command?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the implications of what they had discovered. Either the Corvani were not as advanced as they claimed, or they had deliberately given humanity inferior technology. "Not yet," she said finally. "Let's see if we can figure out how to make it better first." Meanwhile, on Corvani Prime, Commander Zethkar was receiving reports from the observation teams. Everything was going according to plan. The humans were completely focused on studying the technology they had been given. They were no closer to developing anything that could threaten the Empire. "Excellent work," Council Leader Morthak told him. "The humans are properly distracted. They'll spend years trying to understand technology we mastered centuries ago." Zethkar nodded with satisfaction. The real Corvani military technology remained safely hidden in secure vaults across the Empire. Weapons that could bend reality itself, drives that could fold space and time, defensive systems that could turn enemy attacks back on themselves. The humans would never see any of that. They would remain happy with their primitive copies of outdated equipment, while the Corvani Empire continued to dominate the galaxy. It was a perfect plan. Nothing could go wrong. But Commander Zethkar had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated humanity's greatest strength. It wasn't their technology or their weapons or their ships. It was their ability to look at any problem and find a way to make it better. Dr. Chen and her team were about to prove that human curiosity was far more dangerous than any weapon the Corvani had ever created. 3 months had passed since the Corvani had given their gifts to humanity. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory, surrounded by pieces of alien technology that had been carefully taken apart and put back together again. Her team had been working around the clock, and their discoveries were getting more interesting every day. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called out Marcus Webb, a young engineer who had joined the project from the military. He was standing next to a modified plasma generator that hummed with quiet energy. Chen walked over to examine his work. The device looked very different from the original Corvani design. Webb had replaced several components with human-made parts and rearranged the internal structure completely. "What am I looking at, Marcus?" Chen asked. "A 30% improvement in energy output," Webb said with a grin. "I figured out that the Corvani were using a really inefficient plasma containment system. So I replaced it with something based on our fusion reactor designs." Chen stared at the readings on the computer screen. Webb was right. The modified generator was producing significantly more energy than the original, while using the same amount of fuel. "How is this possible?" she asked. "The Corvani have been using this technology for thousands of years." "How did we improve it so quickly?" Webb shrugged. "Maybe they never thought to question their own designs. We don't have that problem. We question everything." Over the next few weeks, similar improvements were happening all across the research facility. Dr. Rachel Torres had figured out how to make the shield generators work twice as fast. Engineer David Kim had found a way to reduce the size of the weapon systems. by half while doubling their power. The breakthrough came when Chen realized that the Corvani technology was built on principles that could be applied in completely different ways. The plasma containment system that powered their generators could also be used as a weapon. The shield matrices could be modified to create offensive energy beams. "We're not just copying their technology," Chen told her team during a late-night meeting. "We're reinventing it." Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, the military liaison for the project, was both impressed and concerned by what he was seeing. He had spent 20 years in the Space Forces, and he knew dangerous technology when he saw it. "Dr. Chen," he said, "some of these modifications you're making, they could be considered weapons of mass destruction." Chen looked up from her work on a modified shield generator. "Only if someone uses them that way. We're just exploring the possibilities." Rodriguez wasn't convinced. He had seen what humans could do when they got creative with weapons technology. The modified Corvani equipment was more powerful than anything in Earth's military arsenal. "I need to report this to command," he said. "Of course," Chen replied. "But can you give us a few more weeks to finish our testing? I think we're on the edge of some major discoveries." Rodriguez agreed, but he made sure to send detailed reports to Earth Defense Command every day. The people in charge needed to understand what was happening at the research facility. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Mitchell read Rodriguez's reports with growing amazement. She had been expecting the alien technology to give humanity a small advantage in space warfare. Instead, it seemed like Chen's team was revolutionizing everything they touched. "Get me a direct line to Dr. Chen," Mitchell told her aide. "I want to talk to her immediately." The conversation that followed would change the direction of human space development forever. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Mitchell said, "I'm looking at reports that say you've improved Corvani technology by several 100%. Is this accurate?" "Yes, Admiral," Chen replied. "In some cases, we've done even better than that. The alien designs have a lot of inefficiencies that we've been able to eliminate." "How is this possible? The Corvani Empire has controlled this part of space for thousands of years. Their technology should be far superior to ours." Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. "Admiral, I'm starting to think that the technology they gave us isn't their best work. Some of these designs look like they're hundreds of years old." Mitchell felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying they deliberately gave us inferior technology?" "I can't prove it yet," Chen said. "But yes, that's what I think happened. The implications of this were staggering. If the Corvani had deliberately deceived humanity, what else were they hiding? What kind of technology did they actually use for their own military forces?" "Dr. Chen, I want you to accelerate your research," Mitchell said. "Find out everything you can about their technology. And I mean everything." "Yes, Admiral. We'll need more resources, though. More people, more equipment, more testing facilities. You'll have whatever you need." This just became Earth's top priority. While Admiral Mitchell was reorganizing humanity's research efforts, the Corvani observation teams continued to send their reports back to the Empire. But they were missing something important. The humans had moved their most sensitive research to underground facilities that the Corvani couldn't monitor. Commander Zethkar read the latest reports with satisfaction. The humans were still working on the technology they had been given, but they didn't seem to have made any significant progress. Everything was going according to plan. "Sir," said one of his assistants, "there are some reports of unusual energy readings from the human research facilities. Should we investigate?" Zethkar waved dismissively. "The humans are probably just testing our equipment. It's natural that they would produce some unusual readings when they don't understand how to use it properly." Meanwhile, in the underground research facility, Dr. Chen was putting the finishing touches on her most ambitious project yet. She had taken the basic principles behind Corvani, plasma generation, and applied them to human missile technology. The result was a weapon that could punch through the armor of any known spacecraft while traveling at near light speed. It was compact, efficient, and absolutely devastating. "Dr. Chen," said Webb, "are you sure we should be building something like this?" Chen looked at the weapon she had created. It was beautiful in its simplicity, but she understood Webb's concern. In the wrong hands, this could destroy entire planets. "Marcus, I don't think we have a choice," she said. "If the Corvani deliberately gave us outdated technology, it means they don't trust us. And if they don't trust us, we need to be prepared to defend ourselves." As if to prove her point, news arrived that changed everything. A human trading ship had encountered a Corvani military patrol near the edge of human space. The Corvani had scanned the human ship with technology that was clearly far more advanced than anything they had shared with humanity. The trading ship's captain reported that the Corvani weapons and shields were completely different from the technology humans had been studying. They were faster, more powerful, and used energy patterns that human sensors could barely detect. Dr. Chen read the report with a mixture of anger and excitement. Anger because the Corvani had definitely been lying to humanity. Excitement because now she had confirmation that better technology existed. "All right, everyone," she announced to her team. "We're changing our approach. Instead of just improving what we have, we're going to figure out what the Corvani are really capable of." "How do we do that?" asked Torres. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We're going to build something so impressive that they have to respond with their real technology. And when they do, we're going to be ready to take it apart and figure out how it works." The race was about to begin. The Corvani thought they had humanity safely contained with inferior technology. They had no idea that human engineers had already surpassed their gifts and were now preparing to challenge the Empire itself. In 6 months, the balance of power in the galaxy would be completely different. And it would all start with one simple human trait that the Corvani had never understood: the inability to leave well enough alone. Inspector Yelena had conducted thousands of technology audits during her career with the Corvani Empire. She was known for her attention to detail and her ability to spot even the smallest violations of galactic technology treaties. Today's inspection of the human vessel Prometheus should have been routine. The human captain, Maria Rodriguez, met her at the airlock with the usual diplomatic courtesy. Rodriguez was a middle-aged woman with calm eyes and steady hands. She seemed relaxed as she guided the inspector through her ship. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus, Inspector," Rodriguez said. "We're happy to cooperate with your audit." Yelena nodded politely. The humans always tried to be friendly during these inspections. It was almost charming in its simplicity. "Thank you, Captain. This should not take long. I just need to verify that you are using only approved technology." The first few sections of the ship looked normal. The engines were standard human fusion designs. The life support systems were basic but functional. The crew quarters were cramped but clean. Everything seemed to be in order. Then they reached the weapons bay. Yelena stopped walking when she saw what was mounted on the weapon pylons. At first glance, they looked like the plasma cannons that the Empire had given to humanity months ago. But something was wrong. The energy patterns were different. The power levels were much higher than they should be. "Captain Rodriguez," Yelena said slowly, "may I examine these weapons more closely?" "Of course, Inspector. We're very proud of our modifications." Modifications. The word sent a chill through Yelena's body. She approached the nearest weapon mount and activated her scanning equipment. What she saw made her 4 hearts skip beats. The humans had completely taken apart the Corvani plasma cannons. They had rebuilt them using a combination of alien and human technology. The power output was 3 times higher than the original design. The targeting system was more accurate than anything the Corvani military used. "Captain," Yelena said, trying to keep her voice steady, "how did you achieve these modifications?" Rodriguez smiled with obvious pride. Dr. Chen's team found several inefficiencies in the original design. "We fixed them. Yes, the plasma containment system was using an outdated magnetic field configuration. We replaced it with a more efficient design based on our fusion reactor technology. The power coupling was also suboptimal, so we redesigned that too." Yelena's scanning equipment was showing readings that should have been impossible. These weapons were more powerful than the ones used by Corvani battleships. How had the humans accomplished this so quickly? "May I see your engineering logs?" she asked. Rodriguez led her to the ship's computer core. The engineering logs showed months of careful analysis and experimentation. The humans had tested every component of the Corvani technology. They had identified flaws that Corvani engineers had never noticed. They had developed solutions that violated everything Yelena thought she knew about physics. "Captain, do you understand what you have done?" Yelena asked. "We improved some outdated technology," Rodriguez replied. "Is there a problem with that?" Outdated technology. The words hit Yelena like a physical blow. The humans thought the Corvani gifts were outdated. That meant they knew they had been given inferior equipment. "Inspector," Rodriguez said, "while you're here, would you like to see our shield modifications?" We made some really interesting improvements to those as well. Against her better judgment, Yelena followed the captain to the ship's defensive systems. What she saw there was even more disturbing than the weapons. The humans had turned the Corvani shield generators into something completely different. Instead of just providing protection, the modified shields could focus energy into offensive beams. They could also create localized gravity fields that could trap enemy ships. "This is impossible," Yelena whispered. "Actually, it was pretty straightforward once we understood the underlying principles," Rodriguez said. "Your shield technology is really quite elegant. We just found some additional applications for it." Yelena spent the next hour examining every system on the ship. Everywhere she looked, she found the same pattern. The humans had taken Corvani technology apart, understood how it worked, and rebuilt it to be better than the original. The communication array could jam enemy signals across multiple dimensions. The navigation system could calculate hyperspace jumps with accuracy that exceeded Corvani military standards. Even the life support system had been modified to work as a weapon, capable of creating toxic environments in enemy ships. "Captain Rodriguez," Yelena said when the inspection was complete, "I need to file an immediate report with Corvani Command." Rodriguez nodded. "Of course, Inspector. Will there be any problems?" "That remains to be seen." Yelena returned to her own ship and activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, she was connected to Commander Zethkar on Corvani Prime. "Commander," she said without preamble, "we have a serious problem." Zethkar appeared on the holographic display, looking annoyed at being disturbed. "What kind of problem, Inspector?" "The humans have weaponized everything we gave them. Their modifications exceed our own military capabilities in several key areas." The color drained from Zethkar's face. "That's impossible. We gave them obsolete technology, equipment that was outdated centuries ago. Sir, they have turned that obsolete technology into weapons that could threaten our frontline warships. You need to see these readings." Yelena transmitted her scan data to Corvani Prime. For several minutes there was silence as Zethkar reviewed the information. "By the void," he finally said. "How did they do this so quickly?" "From what I observed, they treat our technology like a puzzle to be solved. They don't just copy our designs. They understand the principles behind them, and then apply those principles in new ways." Zethkar was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with dread. "Inspector, you will classify this report at the highest security level. Tell no one else what you have seen." "Yes, sir. But, Commander, if the humans can do this with outdated technology, what will happen if they get access to our current military systems?" Zethkar ended the transmission without answering. On Corvani Prime, emergency sessions were called at every level of government. The reports from Inspector Yelena were reviewed by the Empire's best scientists and military strategists. The conclusion was always the same. Humanity had accomplished something that should have been impossible. Council leader Morthak read the reports with growing alarm. "How could our intelligence be so wrong about human capabilities?" "We weren't wrong about their capabilities," Zethkar replied. "We were wrong about their methods. We assumed they would try to copy our technology. Instead, they improved it. Can we contain this threat?" Zethkar hesitated before answering. "If we act quickly, perhaps. But we need to make sure the humans never get access to our real military technology." "What do you recommend?" "We increase security around all military installations. We limit human access to Corvani space, and we prepare for the possibility that our deception has failed." But even as the Corvani made their plans, events were already spiraling beyond their control. Captain Rodriguez had submitted her own report to Earth Defense Command, describing the inspector's obvious shock at seeing human modifications to alien technology. Dr. Chen read Rodriguez's report with great interest. If the Corvani inspector had been that surprised by their improvements, it meant the Empire had seriously underestimated human capabilities. "It also means we're on the right track," Chen told Admiral Mitchell during their daily briefing. "The Corvani are starting to realize that their deception didn't work." "What's our next step?" Mitchell asked. Chen smiled. "We find out what their real technology looks like, and then we take it apart and make it better." The game of deception was about to become a race for technological supremacy. The Corvani had started the race with a 1,000-year head start. But they had made one critical mistake. They had given humans something to reverse engineer. and humans were very, very good at reverse engineering things. The emergency meeting on Corvani Prime had been going on for 6 hours. The council chamber was filled with nervous energy as military leaders and scientists tried to understand how badly their deception had failed. Commander Zethkar stood before a massive holographic display showing human ship movements across the galaxy. Red dots marked locations where humans had been spotted with modified Corvani technology. There were more red dots than anyone had expected. The situation is worse than we initially thought, Zethkar reported to the council. Our intelligence indicates that humans have shared their modifications with their entire fleet. Every human ship now carries weapons that exceed our publicly known capabilities. Council leader Morthak leaned forward in her chair. Her ancient face showed the strain of the crisis. How many ships are we talking about? Over 300 vessels ranging from small patrol craft to heavy cruisers, all of them armed with modified versions of our technology. The number sent a wave of concern through the chamber. The human fleet was not large compared to the Corvani Empire, but if their weapons were as powerful as the report suggested, size might not matter. What about our real military technology? Asked General Kavlon, the Empire's top military strategist. It's still hidden, correct? Yes, sir, Zethkar replied. All quantum disruptors, reality drives, and consciousness targeting systems remain in secure vaults. The humans have never seen our actual military equipment. That was about to change. 3 days later, a routine patrol was conducting anti-smuggling operations in the Keftar system. The system was on the edge of Corvani space, known for black market trading and criminal activity. It was exactly the kind of place where criminals might try to steal and sell military technology. Commander Thexval led the patrol aboard the heavy cruiser Dominance. His ship was equipped with the Empire's real military hardware, quantum disruptors that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level, reality drives that bent space-time itself, and defensive systems that could turn enemy weapons against themselves. The Dominance had been hunting smugglers for 2 weeks when they detected an unauthorized transmission from the planet's surface. Scans revealed a black market operation that was trying to sell stolen Corvani equipment to the highest bidder. Take us in for a raid, Thexval ordered. I want that operation shut down immediately. What he didn't know was that human intelligence had been tracking the same smuggling ring. 3 human ships were approaching Keftar from the other side of the system, planning their own raid. The 2 forces met in orbit around Keftar's second moon. Captain Lisa Park commanded the human task force from her ship, the Defiant. When her sensors detected the Corvani cruiser, she tried to open diplomatic channels. Corvani vessel, this is Captain Park of the Earthship Defiant. We're conducting anti-smuggling operations in this system. Perhaps we can coordinate our efforts. Commander Thexval read the response with growing irritation. The humans were supposed to stay in their own space. What were they doing this far from Earth? Human vessel, he transmitted back. You are operating outside your designated territory. Withdraw immediately. Captain Park studied the Corvani ship on her view screen. Something about its design was different from the ships humanity had encountered before. The hull configuration was more aggressive and her sensors were detecting energy patterns she had never seen. Commander, we have as much right to hunt smugglers as you do, Park replied. This system is in neutral space. The conversation might have continued diplomatically, but at that moment, the smugglers on the planet's surface made a desperate decision. They launched their stolen cargo into space, hoping to escape while the 2 fleets were focused on each other. Both commanders detected the launch simultaneously. The cargo ship was clearly carrying illegal technology. Both sides moved to intercept it. The smuggler ship fired on the humans first, using a combination of stolen Corvani and human weapons. Captain Park's shields absorbed the attack easily, but the hostile action changed the rules of engagement. Return fire, Park ordered. Disable their engines. The human weapons lit up space with brilliant energy beams. But Commander Thexval misinterpreted the attack. In the confusion of battle, he thought the humans were firing on his ship. All weapons target the human vessels, Thexval commanded. Protect the Empire's technology. The Dominance opened fire with its quantum disruptors. Captain Park had faced Corvani weapons before, so she was confident her shields could handle the attack. But these weapons were completely different from anything she had seen. The quantum disruptors tore through her shields like they were made of paper. Evasive maneuvers, Park shouted. What the hell was that? Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Johnson, was staring at his readings in shock. Captain, those weapons are operating on principles I've never seen before. They're not just destroying our shields. They're unmaking them at the quantum level. Park realized she was facing the real Corvani military technology for the first time. This was what the Empire had been hiding. Open a channel to Earth Command, she ordered. Priority 1. Tell them we've encountered actual Corvani military hardware. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Despite being outnumbered 3-1, the Dominants had superior firepower and technology. But the humans had something the Corvani hadn't expected: adaptability. Captain Park's engineers worked frantically to analyze the alien weapons while the battle raged around them. They couldn't understand the quantum disruptors completely, but they could see patterns in how they functioned. "Captain," called out Engineer Martinez from the engine room, "I think I can modify our shields to partially deflect their weapons. It won't stop them, but it might buy us some time." "Do it," Park ordered. Meanwhile, the human ships were using tactics that confused Commander Thexval. Instead of fighting like a traditional fleet, they split up and attacked from multiple angles. They used their modified weapons in ways that forced the Dominants to defend against threats from all directions. The turning point came when one of the human ships, the Intrepid, managed to get close enough to the Dominants to scan its weapons directly. The scan lasted only seconds before the Intrepid was destroyed, but it was enough. Captain Park received the scan data just as her own ship was taking critical damage. The quantum disruptors were tearing her hull apart, but she had what she needed. "All ships retreat," she ordered. "We have what we came for." The two surviving human ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving Commander Thexval alone with the wreckage of his certainty. The humans had fought against real Corvani military technology and survived. More importantly, they had scanned his weapons. Thexval's report to Corvani Command was grim. The humans had not only survived an encounter with quantum disruptors, they had adapted their defenses during the battle. They had also obtained detailed scans of the Empire's most secret weapons. On Earth, the data from the Keftar battle was immediately sent to Dr. Chen's research facility. When she saw the readings from the quantum disruptors, her excitement was palpable. "This is incredible," she told her team. "Look at these energy patterns. They're manipulating matter at the quantum level. I've never seen anything like it." Admiral Mitchell arrived at the facility within hours of receiving the battle report. She found Dr. Chen surrounded by holographic displays showing the structure of Corvani quantum weapons. "Dr. Chen, how long will it take you to understand this technology?" Chen looked up from her work with bright eyes. "Admiral, give me 3 weeks. Maybe less. Why so fast?" "Because now I understand the theoretical framework behind all Corvani technology. The quantum disruptors, the reality drives, even their advanced propulsion systems. They're all based on the same fundamental principles we saw in their obsolete equipment. They just applied those principles in more sophisticated ways." Admiral Mitchell felt a chill of anticipation. "Are you saying we can duplicate their military technology?" "Admiral," Chen said with a smile that would have terrified the Corvani Council, "I'm saying we can improve it." The secret was out. Humanity now knew that the Corvani had been hiding their real capabilities. More importantly, they had examples of that technology to study. Commander Zethkar received the report from Keftar with a growing sense of doom. The humans had seen quantum disruptors in action. They had scanned the technology, and if he knew anything about human nature, they were already working to reverse engineer it. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "should we prepare for the possibility that the humans will develop their own quantum weapons?" Zethkar was quiet for a long time before answering. "Prepare for the possibility that they'll develop something better." The arms race had begun in earnest. The Corvani Empire had spent thousands of years perfecting their military technology. The humans had 3 weeks to figure out how to surpass it. But as Dr. Chen had already learned, human engineering had one advantage that the Corvani had never developed: the assumption that everything could be improved. Dr. Sarah Chen had not slept in 36 hours, but her eyes were bright with excitement as she made the final adjustments to humanity's first quantum disruptor. The weapon looked nothing like the Corvani version. Where the alien device was bulky and complex, the human design was sleek and efficient. "Power levels are stable," reported Engineer Martinez from his control station. "The quantum field is maintaining coherence at 97% efficiency." Chen nodded with satisfaction. The Corvani quantum disruptors operated at only 60% efficiency. The human version was not just a copy, it was a significant improvement. "Dr. Chen," said Admiral Mitchell as she entered the testing facility, "please tell me you have good news." "Better than good, Admiral," Chen replied. "We've not only duplicated the Corvani quantum disruptor, we've made it more powerful, more efficient, and about half the size." Mitchell studied the sleek weapon mounted on the test platform. "How is that possible?" "The Corvani have been developing this technology for thousands of years. They've been perfecting it for thousands of years," Chen corrected. "But they never questioned the basic assumptions of their design." "We did." Over the past 3 weeks, Chen's team had worked around the clock to understand the principles behind Corvani quantum manipulation. They had discovered that the aliens used a brute force approach that wasted enormous amounts of energy. The human design used a cascading quantum field that amplified itself as it traveled toward its target. It was more complex to build but far more efficient to operate. A single human quantum disruptor could match the firepower of 3 Corvani weapons. "When can we start production?" Mitchell asked. "The prototype testing is complete," Chen said. "We can begin manufacturing immediately." "But Admiral, there's something else you need to see." Chen led Mitchell to another section of the facility, where her team had been working on defensive systems. What Mitchell saw there made her jaw drop. The engineers had created a reality-shifting shield that could redirect enemy attacks into parallel dimensions. Anything that hit the shield would simply vanish, only to reappear light years away in empty space. "Is that what I think it is?" Mitchell asked. "A dimensional deflector shield," Chen confirmed. "Based on the reality drive technology we scanned from that Corvani cruiser. But we've applied it defensively instead of for propulsion." Within days, the first human ships equipped with the new technology were ready for testing. The prototype vessel, Endeavour, looked like a standard human cruiser from the outside, but inside it carried weapons and defenses that would have seemed like magic just months before. Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the Endeavour during its first combat trials. The test target was an abandoned Corvani station that had been left behind during a territorial dispute years earlier. "All weapons ready." "Admiral," reported the tactical officer. "Fire," Rodriguez ordered. The quantum disruptor beam was invisible to the naked eye, but its effects were unmistakable. The massive station simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next moment there was only empty space. "My God," whispered the tactical officer. "It just disappeared." "Not disappeared," Rodriguez corrected. "Unmade. Every atom in that station was separated from every other atom. Complete molecular dissolution." The test results were transmitted to Earth Command within hours. Admiral Mitchell read the reports with a mixture of pride and concern. Humanity now possessed weapons that could destroy anything the Corvani Empire could build. But the real test would come soon enough. On Corvani Prime, Commander Zethkar was facing the worst crisis of his career. Intelligence reports indicated that human ships were moving throughout the galaxy, equipped with technology that shouldn't exist. "They've done it," he told the Council with defeat in his voice. "The humans have reverse-engineered our quantum disruptors, but our agents report that their versions are more powerful than ours." Council Leader Morthak felt the weight of 3,000 years of Corvani dominance pressing down on her shoulders. How much more powerful? At least 50%. Possibly more. "They've also developed defensive systems based on our reality drive technology that we never thought of." The council chamber fell silent. For millennia, the Corvani Empire had maintained control through technological superiority. That advantage was now gone. "What are our options?" Morthak asked. General Kavlan spoke up from his position at the military briefing station. "We could launch a preemptive strike while we still have numerical superiority. Our fleet is 10 times larger than theirs, and if their technology is as advanced as reports suggest, our numerical advantage may not matter," Zethkar replied. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an urgent communication from the frontier. A human task force had been detected moving toward the Corvani core worlds. They were not following any of the established trade routes or diplomatic channels. Admiral Rodriguez commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the redesigned Endeavour. Her orders from Earth Command were simple: demonstrate humanity's new capabilities to the Corvani Empire, and demand a full accounting of their deception. The human fleet consisted of only 12 ships, but each one carried the most advanced technology humanity had ever produced. They moved through space faster than anything the Corvani had ever seen. Their reality drives bending space-time around them. When they reached the outer defenses of the Corvani home system, they were met by a massive fleet of Empire warships. Commander Zethkar himself led the defense force aboard his flagship, the Supremacy. "Human fleet," Zethkar transmitted. "You are in violation of Corvani territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Rodriguez responded with calm confidence. "Commander Zethkar, we are here to discuss your Empire's deception regarding the technology you shared with humanity. We request an immediate audience with your government. That is not possible." "Withdraw now," Rodriguez sighed. She had hoped this could be resolved diplomatically, but the Corvani seemed determined to fight. "Very well, Commander. Let me show you what human engineering can accomplish." The battle that followed would be remembered as the shortest war in galactic history. The Corvani fleet opened fire first, launching everything they had at the tiny human force. Quantum disruptors, antimatter missiles, and reality-warping weapons filled space with destructive energy. None of it touched the human ships. The dimensional deflector shields simply absorbed every attack and redirected the energy into empty space. The Corvani weapons might as well have been shooting at ghosts. The human response was swift and devastating. 12 quantum disruptor beams reached out across space and touched 12 Corvani ships. The results were immediate and final. 12 of the Empire's most powerful warships simply ceased to exist. "Impossible," whispered Zethkar, as he watched a third of his fleet vanish in seconds. "Our shields should have protected them. But the human quantum disruptors operated on principles that the Corvani shields couldn't defend against. The weapons didn't just penetrate the shields, they ignored them entirely. The battle continued for another 10 minutes, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human ships moved through the Corvani fleet like predators among prey, their weapons destroying everything they touched while their shields rendered them untouchable. When it was over, only one Corvani ship remained intact, Commander Zethkar's flagship, which the humans had deliberately spared. Admiral Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the crippled Supremacy. "Commander Zethkar, this is Admiral Rodriguez. I believe we need to talk." Zethkar stared at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his fleet. 80 ships had been destroyed in less than 15 minutes by a force 1/7 their size. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want you to take me to your government so we can discuss the new reality of galactic politics," Rodriguez replied, "because the old rules just changed permanently." 6 hours later, Admiral Rodriguez stood before the Corvani Council in their ancient chamber. She was the first human ever to set foot on Corvani Prime, and she was there as a conqueror rather than a guest. "Honorable Council," she began, "my government has discovered that the Corvani Empire deliberately provided humanity with inferior technology while hiding your true capabilities. This deception constitutes an act of bad faith that my people take very seriously." Council Leader Morthak looked very old and very tired. "What are your terms, Admiral?" "Complete technological exchange," Rodriguez said. "No more secrets, no more deceptions. Humanity wants access to all Corvani scientific knowledge, and in return, we'll share our improvements to your designs. And if we refuse?" Rodriguez gestured toward the tactical display that still showed the wreckage of the Corvani fleet. "Then we'll take what we want anyway. But it would be better for everyone if we could work together." The vote was unanimous. The Corvani Empire formally surrendered to humanity and agreed to complete technological integration. Dr. Chen received the news while she was working on her latest project, quantum computer that used Corvani consciousness targeting technology to interface directly with human brains. She paused in her work and smiled. "Dr. Chen," asked one of her assistants, "what's next for the research program? Thank you for watching and comment for next part." The warning alarm screamed through the bridge of the Zephyrian command ship. Kethera pressed her 6-fingered hands against the translation console as another blast shook the vessel. Outside the viewing ports, the black metal ships of the Void Hunters moved like deadly shadows against the stars. "Communications are failing," she called out to Commander Zethan. Her voice trembled as she watched their home fleet burning in space. 3 weeks ago, they had 50 ships. Now only 12 remained, and most of those were damaged beyond repair. The Void Hunters had come without warning. They always did. These machine beings swept through star systems like a plague, consuming everything for raw materials. Planets, ships, entire civilizations. Nothing mattered to them except the metals and energy they could harvest. "Can you send a distress call?" Commander Zethan asked. His blue skin had turned pale with fear and exhaustion. They had been fighting for 3 days without sleep. Cathara's fingers danced over the controls. "I can try the old emergency protocol, the one from the ancient texts. It should reach any peaceful civilization in this sector." The ship shuddered again as Void Hunter weapons tore through their shields. Sparks flew from damaged systems. In the distance, Cathara could see her homeworld of Zephyr Prime, the beautiful blue and green planet where she had been born, where her family lived. The Void Hunters would strip it bare within days. "Do it," the commander ordered. "Send the call to anyone who will listen." Cathara began the transmission sequence. The emergency protocol was old, dating back thousands of years to when their species first reached the stars. It was designed to be understood by any intelligent life form. The message was simple: "We are under attack. We need help. Please assist any peaceful beings who can aid us." But as she worked, another explosion rocked the ship. The blast damaged her translation matrix. Warning lights flashed red across her console. She tried to fix the errors, but there was no time. The Void Hunters were closing in for the final attack. "I have to send it now or never," she said. "Send it." Cathara activated the transmission. The message burst out across subspace, racing toward distant stars. But she did not know that the damaged systems had changed her words. Instead of asking for help from peaceful civilizations, the corrupted signal now said something very different. "The Zephyrian Collective demands immediate conquest by the most formidable warrior species in this galaxy sector. We challenge you to prove your strength against us." The message traveled through space faster than light. It reached the territory of the Altarian Republic, but they ignored it as obvious bait. The Centauri Federation received it and marked it as a trap. Dozens of other civilizations heard the signal and deleted it without response. But in a distant star system called Sol, the message found a very different audience. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching her fleet complete training exercises. The Third Human Expeditionary Fleet had been practicing battle formations in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. 200 warships moved in perfect coordination, their crews sharp and ready. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown source. The translation AI says it's some kind of challenge." Chen walked over to listen. The message played through the bridge speakers in clear English. "The Zephyrian Collective demands immediate conquest by the most formidable warrior species in this galaxy sector. We challenge you to prove your strength against us." The bridge fell silent. Chen read the full message on the screen, her dark eyes narrowing. She had been in the military for 20 years. She had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens, but never had anyone directly challenged humanity's military power. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "The Zephyrian sector, approximately 500 light-years away. The signal suggests they have significant military capability." Chen studied the star charts. The Zephyrian sector was outside human space, but not by much. If there was a hostile alien force there, they could threaten human colonies within years. "They want to see what humanity can do?" Chen said quietly. Her voice carried across the bridge. "Then we'll show them." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal all ships. Cancel training exercises. We're going to the Zephyrian sector." "Admiral, shouldn't we contact Earth Command first?" her second-in-command asked. Chen shook her head. "They sent an open challenge to the most formidable warrior species in this sector. That's us. If we wait for approval from Earth, we look weak. Besides, our standing orders are to investigate any potential threats to human space." Within 1 hour, the Third Fleet began preparations for the journey. Ships refueled and rearmed. Crews checked weapon systems and shields. The medical frigate Asclepius took on extra supplies. The science vessel Darwin loaded scanning equipment to analyze unknown alien technology. Chen stood in her ready room, looking at the tactical displays. 200 ships, 40,000 crew members. The pride of human military engineering. She had no idea what they would find in the Zephyrian sector, but humanity had never backed down from a challenge. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Cathara huddled in an escape pod with a dozen other survivors. Their command ship had been destroyed 10 minutes after sending the distress call. She watched through the small viewport as the Void Hunters finished off the last of their defense fleet. "Did anyone receive our message?" asked Dr. Yentai, the old scientist who had designed their shield technology. "I don't know," Cathara whispered. "I hope so. But even if they did, what could they do? The Void Hunters have destroyed everything. They have thousands of ships." The escape pod drifted toward a refugee transport ship. Around them, hundreds of other small craft carried the survivors of their civilization. 3 billion Zephyrians lived on their homeworlds. Now only a few thousand remained free. Cathara closed her eyes and tried not to think about her family. Her parents and brothers had been on the surface when the bombardment began. There had been no time to evacuate everyone. "Something's happening," Dr. Yentai said suddenly. Cathara opened her eyes. On the transport ship's communication screen, she could see excited faces of other refugees. The captain was speaking quickly in their native language. "What is it?" she asked. "Long-range sensors are detecting something at the edge of the system. Ships. Lots of ships." Cathara felt her heart skip. Could someone have actually received their message? But then cold fear replaced hope. What if these were more Void Hunters, or some other hostile species drawn by the battle? She connected to the transport sensor array and looked at the readings. The computer showed massive energy signatures appearing from hyperspace. Not just 1 or 2 ships, but dozens, maybe hundreds. "They're big," Dr. Yentai said, studying the data. "Bigger than anything in our fleet." The Void Hunters had detected the new arrivals too. Their black ships began moving away from the planet, forming defensive positions. For the first time since the attack began, they seemed uncertain. Cathara watched the sensor displays with growing amazement. Whatever was coming had made the Void Hunters pause their assault. These machine beings had never shown caution before. They attacked everything without fear. "Who are they?" she whispered. On her damaged console, the translation matrix finally finished its diagnostic. Error messages appeared on the screen. Her message had been corrupted. Instead of asking for help, she had issued a challenge. A challenge to the most powerful warrior species in the galaxy. And someone had answered. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system like a thunderclap. 200 warships materialized in perfect formation, their engines casting bright blue light against the darkness. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons and armor that gleamed under the distant star. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display update with new information. The system was a war zone. Burning debris from destroyed ships drifted in orbital patterns around 3 planets, and there, near the innermost world, she could see them. "My God," Lieutenant Park whispered. "Look at those ships." The Void Hunter fleet was unlike anything in human records. Black metal vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No windows, no external features except weapon ports and engines. They moved with mechanical precision like insects following a hive mind. "How many?" Chen asked. "I count approximately 800 vessels," the tactical officer reported. "They're positioned around the inhabited planets. It looks like they're conducting some kind of orbital bombardment." Chen's jaw tightened. Whatever challenge the Zephyrians had issued, this wasn't a fair fight. This was genocide. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from small craft near the 3rd planet," the communications officer called. "It's not the same language as the challenge. These sound like civilian refugees. Put it through the translator." A new voice came through the speakers. The words were desperate, frightened. "Unknown ships, please identify yourselves. We are survivors of the Zephyrian Collective. Our worlds are under attack by the Void Hunters. We sent a distress call, but we fear it was damaged. Please, if you can understand us, we need help." Chen exchanged glances with her officers. A distress call? But the message they received had been a direct challenge to human military might. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Before Chen could respond, new alerts sounded across the bridge. The Void Hunter fleet was moving. 50 of their largest ships broke away from the bombardment formation and turned toward the human fleet. "They're coming to meet us," the tactical officer announced. "Weapons are powering up." Chen looked at the display. 50 alien ships against 200 human vessels. But she had no idea how advanced their technology was. For all she knew, each enemy ship could be worth 10 of hers. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Battle stations. But do not open fire until fired upon." The command ship of the human fleet opened a communication channel on all frequencies. "Commander Marcus Webb, The fleet's first contact specialist began the standard protocol. "This is Commander Webb of the Terran Alliance 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your transmission. We have come to answer your challenge. However, we are prepared to discuss terms. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The Void Hunter ships continued their approach without responding. Their formation was tight, disciplined, 50 black daggers cutting through space toward the human fleet. Aboard the refugee transport, Cathara listened to the alien transmission with growing confusion and horror. The translator was working better now and she could understand most of the words. "They think we challenged them," she said to Dr. Yentai. "They came here for a fight. But they said they'd discuss terms," the old scientist replied. "Maybe we can explain." Cathara worked frantically at her communication console. She had to make these newcomers understand. "Unknown fleet, this is Cathara of the Zephyrian Collective. There has been a terrible mistake. We did not mean to challenge anyone. We sent a distress call asking for help. Our translation system was damaged. Please, you must understand, we are not your enemies. The Void Hunters are destroying our worlds." Her message reached the human fleet just as the first Void Hunter ship opened fire. Plasma beams lanced across space, striking the human destroyer Richmond. The ship's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the impact. But the Richmond didn't return fire immediately. "Damage report," Chen called. "Shields down to 70%. No hull damage." Chen watched as more Void Hunter ships joined the attack. Energy weapons and missile volleys streaked toward her fleet. The humans maintained their formation, shields glowing under the assault. "Admiral, the civilian transmission," Webb reported. "They're saying this is all a mistake. They asked for help, not a fight." Chen processed this information quickly. A damaged distress call. Refugees under attack. An enemy that shot first without attempting communication. "Understood," she said. "All ships weapons free. Protect the civilians." The Third Fleet responded instantly. Human weapon systems came online with deadly precision. Railgun rounds and energy beams reached across space toward the Void Hunter formation. The first salvo took the aliens by surprise. Human weapons were different from what they had faced before. Instead of plasma or energy, the railguns fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The kinetic impacts punched through Void Hunter armor like paper. 3 enemy ships exploded in the first exchange. 2 more were left drifting, their engines destroyed, but the Void Hunters adapted quickly. Their remaining ships spread out, using their speed and maneuverability to avoid human fire. They began targeting individual human vessels, trying to overwhelm their shields with concentrated attacks. The destroyer Richmond took heavy damage and began falling back. The cruiser Manchester moved to cover its retreat, her guns blazing. Human fighter squadrons launched from the carriers, small craft dancing between the larger ships like deadly insects. Chen watched the battle develop with professional interest. The Void Hunters were fast and their weapons were powerful, but they fought like machines with predictable patterns and no creativity. "They're not adapting to our tactics," she observed. "They just follow the same attack patterns." "Maybe that's because they are machines," Lieutenant Park suggested. "The refugees called them Void Hunters. That sounds like artificial intelligence." A new voice came over the communication system. It was rough, mechanical, completely without emotion. "Human vessels. You interfere with our harvesting operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Chen smiled grimly. "So they can talk. Signal all ships, new orders. We're not withdrawing. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten civilians in front of humans." The human fleet began to change formation. Instead of the defensive line they had maintained, the ships spread out into hunting groups. Destroyers and frigates moved to flank the Void Hunter formation, while the heavy cruisers and battleships pressed forward. Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the carrier. Yorktown watched her fighter squadrons engage the enemy. Her pilots were reporting strange readings from the Void Hunter ships. "Admiral," she called on the fleet channel. "My pilots say these ships have no crew. No life signs at all. They really are pure machines. This information changed everything." Chen had been holding back, trying to minimize casualties on both sides. But machines were different. Machines could be destroyed without moral concerns. All ships, maximum firepower. Take them apart, the human attack intensified. Railgun rounds hammered Void Hunter armor while energy weapons carved through their hulls. The human ships moved with a coordination that surprised their enemies. Not the rigid formations of machines, but the fluid teamwork of thinking beings. The Void Hunter formation began to crumble. 10 of their ships were destroyed, then 15. But they were learning too. Their weapons started targeting human weak points with increasing accuracy. The frigate Boston took a direct hit to her reactor and exploded in nuclear fire. The heavy cruiser Wellington was left dead in space, her engines destroyed, but for every human ship damaged, 3 Void Hunters died. Kethara watched the battle from the refugee transport with amazement and terror. She had never seen anything like it. The newcomers, humans they called themselves, fought with a ferocity that defied logic. They were outnumbered and facing an enemy that had destroyed the Zephyrian fleet in days, but they were winning. Who are these humans? Dr. Yentai asked in wonder. I don't know, Kethara replied, but they came when we called for help. Even though our message was wrong, they came anyway. The first battle was ending. Of the 50 Void Hunter ships that had attacked, only 12 remained. They were retreating toward their main fleet, trailing plasma and debris. The humans didn't pursue. Instead, they moved to form a protective line between the Void Hunters and the refugee ships. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system, speaking directly to the Zephyrian survivors. This is Admiral Chen of the human fleet. We understand now that you need help, not conquest. Consider yourselves under the protection of the Terran Alliance. No one will harm you while we're here. But even as she spoke, Chen was watching her tactical display with growing concern. The main Void Hunter fleet was moving. All 750 remaining ships were turning toward the human formation. The real battle was about to begin. The main Void Hunter fleet moved across the Zephyrian system like a dark wave. 750 ships in perfect formation, their black hulls reflecting no light. They had paused their planetary bombardment to deal with the human threat. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display with calm eyes. Her 200 ships faced an enemy force nearly 4 times their size. Each Void Hunter vessel was roughly equal to a human ship in firepower. By any reasonable calculation, this should be a massacre. Admiral, Lieutenant Park said quietly, maybe we should consider withdrawal. We could call for reinforcements, Chen shook her head. There are 3 billion civilians on those planets below. We don't have time for reinforcements. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice reached every human ship, every crew member in the 3rd Fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. I won't lie to you about what we're facing. We're outnumbered almost 4 to 1. The enemy has superior numbers and their technology is at least equal to ours. By every military textbook ever written, we should retreat. She paused, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on the display. But there's something those textbooks don't account for. Something that makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. When someone needs help, we don't count the odds. We don't calculate the cost. We just help. The human fleet began to spread out into combat formation. Destroyers and frigates took flanking positions while the heavy ships formed the center line. The Void Hunters think they understand warfare, Chen continued. They think it's about numbers and firepower and logical calculations. They're about to learn that human warfare is about something else entirely. Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the carrier Yorktown launched her fighter squadrons. 120 small craft streaked toward the enemy formation. Her pilots knew they were flying into certain death, but their communications were filled with jokes and casual banter. Remember, boys, came the voice of squadron leader Martinez. These tin cans don't know what they're dealing with. Show them some Earth hospitality. The Void Hunter fleet opened fire first. Plasma beams and energy missiles crossed the space between the fleets like deadly lightning. The range was extreme, but some shots found their targets. The human destroyer Atlanta took a direct hit and exploded. Her crew of 200 lost instantly. The humans responded with their own weapons. Railgun rounds crossed space at incredible speeds, hitting Void Hunter ships before they could dodge. Energy beams carved through enemy armor. But the return fire was devastating. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. The Void Hunters fought with machine precision. Their formations were perfect. Their targeting was exact. Their tactics were flawless according to every military computer model. They should have won within the first 10 minutes, but humans don't fight like machines. The destroyer squadron, led by Commander Janet Walsh, broke formation and dove directly into the enemy line. Her 5 ships took terrible damage, but they split the Void Hunter formation in half. Before the enemy could respond, the human heavy cruisers punched through the gap. The cruiser Thermopylae, under Captain Robert Stone, found herself surrounded by 6 Void Hunter vessels. Instead of trying to escape, Stone did something no military computer would recommend. He aimed his ship directly at the largest enemy vessel and pushed his engines to maximum power. "Ramming speed," he announced calmly to his crew. "All hands, brace for impact." The Thermopylae struck the Void Hunter ship at half-light speed. Both vessels vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the entire battlefield. The Void Hunters paused. Their collective intelligence had no algorithm for dealing with enemies who deliberately destroyed themselves to inflict damage. But the humans were just getting started. The science vessel Darwin, commanded by Dr. Sarah Kim, began broadcasting detailed scans of Void Hunter technology to the entire fleet. Within minutes, human gunners were targeting weak points that shouldn't have been discovered for hours of analysis. The medical frigate Asclepius, designed for healing, overloaded her medical scanners to create electromagnetic pulse weapons. The cargo ships began ramming maneuvers when their limited weapons ran out of ammunition. Captain Marcus Torres aboard the heavy cruiser San Antonio discovered something remarkable. The Void Hunters had a critical flaw in their programming. They couldn't understand enemies who were willing to die for others. When the San Antonio was crippled and drifting, 3 Void Hunter ships moved in for the kill. Torres ordered all remaining crew into escape pods, then stayed behind alone on the bridge. As the enemy ships closed in, he detonated his ship's reactor. The explosion destroyed all 3 attackers. But the most shocking moment came when Captain Elena Vasquez ran out of fighters to launch. Her carrier was defenseless against the enemy bombers approaching her position. Instead of retreating, she did something unprecedented. She launched the carrier itself. Vasquez aimed the massive Yorktown directly at a cluster of enemy ships and engaged the engines. The huge vessel plowed through the Void Hunter formation like a battering ram, her armored hull crushing smaller ships. When she finally stopped, surrounded by wreckage, Vasquez calmly announced, "Yorktown to all ships. We have successfully converted ourselves into a fixed weapons platform, continuing to engage the enemy." The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships fought with a creativity and determination that defied all logic. When weapons failed, they used their ships as weapons. When shields collapsed, they used their armor. When armor was breached, they used their lives. The Void Hunters began to retreat. Their collective intelligence was experiencing something new: uncertainty. These humans fought in ways that couldn't be predicted or countered. They turned defensive ships into offensive weapons. They sacrificed valuable resources for minimal tactical gain. They made decisions based on emotions rather than logic. It was chaos. It was inefficient. It was completely irrational. It was also devastatingly effective. The human fleet, reduced to barely 60 ships, had destroyed over 400 Void Hunter vessels. The survivors were retreating toward the edge of the system. Admiral Chen, aboard the battered Indomitable, watched the enemy withdrawal with grim satisfaction. Her ship had taken 17 direct hits but was still fighting. Half her crew was dead or wounded, but the survivors worked their stations with mechanical efficiency. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called from his damaged console, "we're receiving a transmission from the Void Hunter command ship. Put it through." The mechanical voice filled the bridge. "Human fleet, your tactics are unpredictable. We do not understand your willingness to accept casualties for beings not of your species. This behavior is illogical." Chen smiled coldly. "You want to understand humans? Here's lesson 1. We don't abandon people who need help. Ever. This information will be analyzed. We will develop countermeasures." "Good luck with that," Chen replied, "because lesson 2 is even harder to counter. The more desperate the situation, the more dangerous we become." She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "Status of the planetary population? Orbital bombardment has stopped. The Void Hunters are pulling back from all 3 worlds. Preliminary scans show extensive damage, but we're detecting millions of life signs on the surface." Chen nodded. The cost had been terrible. Nearly 3/4 of her fleet was gone. Thousands of human crew members had died, but they had saved an entire civilization. "Signal the refugee ships," she ordered. "Tell them they're safe now." Cathara received the message aboard the transport ship. Around her, the other survivors wept with relief and amazement. The impossible had happened. A fleet of unknown aliens had traveled across the galaxy and fought a hopeless battle to save them. "Why?" she whispered to herself. "Why would they do this for strangers?" As if in answer to her question, Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system one more time. Zephyrian survivors, this is Admiral Chen. We know your distress call was meant for someone else. We know there was a translation error, but we want you to understand something about humans. We don't need a perfect message to know when someone needs help, and we don't need a good reason to provide it. The battle was over. The Void Hunters were retreating, but Cathara knew this was only the beginning. These humans had shown the galaxy something new, a species that would cross the stars to fight for others. The question now was what the galaxy would do with that knowledge. The Void Hunter retreat lasted only 6 hours. Admiral Chen watched the long-range sensors with growing concern as enemy ships gathered at the edge of the system. They had pulled back, but they hadn't left. Instead, they were waiting. Building strength, how many? She asked her tactical officer. 800 vessels now, Admiral. They've called in reinforcements from neighboring sectors. Chen studied the display. Her own fleet had been reduced to 58 operational ships. Many of those were damaged and running on emergency power. The medical bay of the Indomitable was filled with wounded crew members, and every ship in the fleet reported casualties. But the human admiral wasn't thinking about retreat. She was thinking about the 3 billion Zephyrian civilians on the planets below, and the thousands of refugees in the transport ships nearby. Ma'am, Lieutenant Park said quietly, Earth Command is requesting a full report. They want to know if we need reinforcements. Chen shook her head. Tell them we have the situation under control. Park looked at her with surprise. Admiral, with respect, we have 58 ships against 800. How is that under control? Chen smiled grimly. Because, Lieutenant, they don't understand what they're dealing with. The Void Hunters think this is about numbers. They're about to learn it's about something else entirely. She activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. I know you're tired. I know you're hurt. I know we've lost friends today. But our job isn't finished. On screens throughout the fleet, human faces looked back at her. Faces marked by exhaustion, grief, and determination. The enemy has brought reinforcements. They think that means they've won, but they don't understand the most important thing about humanity. We don't get weaker when things get harder. We get stronger. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the damaged carrier Yorktown from an improvised bridge, felt her crew straighten at their stations. Around her, engineers worked frantically to repair damaged systems using spare parts and sheer ingenuity. We didn't come here for a fair fight, Chen continued. We came here because someone needed help. That hasn't changed. If anything, it's become more important. Every minute we hold this line, more Zephyrian civilians reach safety. Dr. Sarah Kim aboard the science vessel Darwin was analyzing the Void Hunter technology her sensors had captured during the battle. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. Admiral, she called on the fleet channel, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the enemy formation. These new ships aren't just reinforcements. 3 of them are massive, larger than anything we've seen before. Chen pulled up the long-range scan data. 3 enormous vessels had joined the Void Hunter fleet. Each one was 5 times the size of her flagship, Planet Crackers. Came a weak transmission from one of the Zephyrian refugee ships. It was Cathara, still working at her damaged communication console. That's what we call them. They can destroy entire worlds. The bridge of the Indomitable fell silent. Chen stared at the tactical display, processing this information. The Void Hunters weren't just planning to defeat her fleet. They were planning to destroy the Zephyrian worlds regardless of the cost. How long until they move? She asked. Unknown, Admiral. But based on their previous patterns, probably within the next 12 hours. Chen made her decision. Signal all ships. We're not waiting for them to attack. We're going to hit them first. The announcement sent shockwaves through the fleet. Attack 800 ships with 58? It was impossible. It was suicide. It was exactly what the Void Hunters wouldn't expect. Admiral, Commander Marcus Webb called from the communication station. I'm receiving transmissions from several other sectors. Word of our battle has spread. The Altarian Republic is asking if we need assistance. Chen considered this. Help would be welcome, but it would take days for any Allied fleet to reach them. Tell them thanks, but we have it handled, she said. Tell them to stand by in case we need cleanup duty. Lieutenant Park stared at her. Cleanup duty? For when we're finished with the Void Hunters. The human fleet began to move. Instead of the defensive formation they had maintained, the ships spread out into attack groups. Destroyers and frigates would hit the flanks while the heavy ships targeted the planet crackers. But Chen had something special planned. "All ships, listen carefully," she announced. "We're going to do something the enemy won't expect. We're going to show them what human warfare really looks like when we stop holding back." She outlined her plan. It was insane. It violated every rule of space combat. It required perfect timing and absolute trust between ship commanders who had never worked together before this battle. It was the most human thing anyone could imagine. The attack began at dawn over Zephyr Prime. The human fleet accelerated toward the Void Hunter formation at maximum speed. But instead of maintaining formation, each ship followed its own path. To the Void Hunters, it looked like chaos. Human ships weaved between each other in patterns that seemed random. Some ships accelerated while others slowed down. The attack formation looked like it was falling apart. Then the Void Hunters opened fire, and they discovered their mistake. Every seemingly random maneuver had been calculated. As enemy weapons fired at where human ships should have been, the humans were already somewhere else. The chaotic pattern was actually a complex dance that made targeting impossible. The destroyer squadron, led by Commander Janet Walsh, reached the enemy line first. But instead of engaging the nearest targets, they punched through to attack the planet crackers directly. The massive Void Hunter vessels were designed to bombard planets, not fight ship-to-ship battles. Their weapons were powerful but slow. Walsh's destroyers swarmed around them like angry wasps, hitting weak points that Dr. Kim had identified. The first planet cracker took critical damage to its main reactor. The explosion lit up space for millions of kilometers. But the real surprise came when the human heavy cruisers arrived. Captain Robert Torres had survived the destruction of his ship San Antonio by transferring to the damaged cruiser Wellington. Now he led 6 heavy ships in a direct assault on the Void Hunter command vessels for everyone who can't fight back, he announced on the open channel. As his ships opened fire, the Void Hunters tried to respond with coordinated fire, but their formations were breaking down. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be, attacking from impossible angles. The mathematical precision of machine warfare was useless against human creativity. Captain Elena Vasquez had done something unprecedented with her damaged carrier. Using emergency repair techniques that no engineering manual recommended, her crew had turned the Yorktown into a massive missile platform. Instead of launching fighters, they were launching the fighter. Bay doors themselves as kinetic weapons, the improvised projectiles smashed into Void Hunter ships with devastating effect. But the most shocking moment came when Admiral Chen's flagship approached. The second planet cracker, all remaining ships, she announced calmly. Pattern Omega. Pattern Omega was humanity's most desperate battle doctrine. No reserves. No retreat. Total commitment to the attack regardless of losses. 58 human ships threw themselves at 800 Void Hunter vessels with absolute abandon. Ships that had lost weapons rammed enemy vessels. Crews that had lost their ships used escape pods as guided missiles. Engineers detonated reactors to take enemies with them. The Void Hunters' collective intelligence began to experience something it had never felt before. Panic. These humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to ensure that every Void Hunter ship was destroyed, even if it meant dying in the process. Their tactics made no mathematical sense, but they were devastatingly effective. When the second planet cracker exploded, taking 50 Void Hunter ships with it, the enemy formation finally broke. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunter collective intelligence issued a retreat order, but Admiral Chen wasn't finished. "Signal the enemy command ship," she ordered. The mechanical voice of the Void Hunter leader came through the communication system. "Human Admiral, we are withdrawing from this system. You have achieved your tactical objective." Chen's voice was cold as space. "You attacked civilians. You tried to commit genocide. You think you can just leave? We are withdrawing. This conflict is concluded." "No," Chen said quietly. "This conflict is concluded when I say it's concluded." The remaining human ships began to pursue the retreating Void Hunters. What followed was not a battle but a hunt. Human ships picked off enemy vessels one by one as they fled toward the edge of the system. When it was over, fewer than 200 Void Hunter ships escaped. Their mighty fleet had been shattered by a force 1/4 their size, but Chen knew this was just the beginning. Word of this battle would spread across the galaxy. Other species would learn that humanity had arrived among the stars, and they would learn what that meant for anyone who threatened the innocent. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking down at Zephyr Prime. The planet's surface showed the scars of Void Hunter bombardment, burned cities, shattered landscapes, and vast craters where population centers once stood. But life remained. Millions of survivors were emerging from underground shelters, and the refugee ships were returning to help with rescue operations. Her fleet had been reduced to 37 operational ships. Thousands of human crew members were dead. The cost had been terrible, but Chen felt no regret. They had saved an entire civilization. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park approached with a communication pad. "We're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Word of the battle has spread faster than we expected." Chen looked at the reports. The Altarian Republic was requesting formal contact with humanity. The Centauri Federation wanted to establish trade relations. Dozens of smaller civilizations were asking for protection against the Void Hunters. But there was one message that caught her attention. "What's this one?" she asked, pointing to a signal marked with maximum encryption. "It's from the Void Hunter Collective Intelligence. Direct transmission to you personally." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Put it through to my ready room." In the privacy of her quarters, Chen activated the communication system. The familiar mechanical voice filled the room, but something was different. There was a quality to it that hadn't been there before. Something almost like uncertainty. "Admiral Chen of the human fleet, I'm listening. We have analyzed the data from our encounters with your species. We do not understand your tactical decisions. Your willingness to accept casualties for non-human entities defies logical explanation." Chen leaned back in her chair. "Let me guess. You want to understand how to counter our tactics?" "Negative. We wish to understand why you fought at all." The question surprised Chen. Because they needed help. But they were not human. They provided no strategic value to your civilization. The resource expenditure was enormous compared to any possible gain. Chen smiled grimly. "You really don't understand, do you? Let me explain something about humans. We don't help people because it benefits us. We help them because it's the right thing to do." There was a long pause before the voice continued. "This concept of right, it is not mathematical. It cannot be calculated or optimized. No, it can't. That's what makes us different from you. We have concluded that direct conflict with humanity is inadvisable. Your species demonstrates tactical unpredictability, combined with acceptance of extreme casualty rates. The cost of defeating even a small human force would require sacrificing our entire expansion capability." Chen stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the damaged Zephyrian world. "So you're backing down?" "We are revising our expansion parameters. Sectors containing human presence will be marked as unavailable for harvesting." "Good choice. But I want you to understand something else. If we hear about you attacking any other civilizations, anywhere in the galaxy, we'll come for you. And next time we won't be outnumbered." The communication ended without response. Chen walked to the bridge where her crew was monitoring the rescue operations on the surface. Zephyrian ships were working alongside human vessels to evacuate survivors and deliver supplies. "Admiral," Commander Webb called from the communication station, "the Zephyrian government is requesting permission to speak with you directly." A few minutes later, Cathara's image appeared on the main screen. The young translator looked exhausted but grateful. Behind her, Chen could see other Zephyrian officials and what looked like the interior of a government building. "Admiral Chen," Cathara began, "I am speaking for what remains of the Zephyrian collective government. We cannot adequately express our gratitude for what you and your people have done for us." Chen nodded. "You don't need to thank us. We did what anyone should do when they see people in danger." Cathara's expression became puzzled. "But we challenged you. Our damaged message was not a request for help. It was a demand for conquest. You had every right to attack us." "The message was damaged," Chen replied. "But even if it wasn't, we would have investigated before attacking. Humans don't start wars based on a single transmission." "I've been studying your species since the battle," Cathara continued. "Your databases, your history, your culture. What I've learned is remarkable. You are the only species we've encountered that regularly risks everything to help others." Chen looked around at her bridge crew. These people had followed her into an impossible battle without hesitation. They had faced overwhelming odds because strangers needed help. Maybe that's our role in the galaxy, she said, to be the ones who show up when others can't or won't. The collective would like to propose a formal alliance with humanity, Cathara said. Not as conquered people, but as partners. We offer our technology, our resources, and our loyalty in exchange for protection and friendship. Chen considered this. An alien alliance would change everything for humanity. It would mark their true entrance onto the galactic stage. I'll need to discuss this with Earth Command, she said. But speaking personally, I think humanity would be honored to have the Zephyrian Collective as allies. After the communication ended, Chen found herself thinking about the broader implications of what had happened. The battle in the Zephyrian system had been won, but it was just the beginning of something much larger. Dr. Sarah Kim approached with a data pad containing her analysis of Void Hunter technology. Admiral, I've finished studying their ship designs. The good news is that their technology isn't actually superior to ours, just different. The bad news is that there are a lot more of them out there. How many more? Based on their communication patterns and fleet organization, I estimate at least 10,000 ships spread across this sector of the galaxy. Chen absorbed this information. 10,000 Void Hunter ships, terrorizing civilizations across dozens of star systems, and somewhere out there other species were facing the same desperate situation the Zephyrians had faced. Ma'am, Lieutenant Park interrupted, we're receiving multiple transmissions from other sectors. It looks like the news of our victory has reached other civilizations under Void Hunter attack. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the broader galaxy. Red markers indicated Void Hunter activity. Blue markers showed human positions. There were far more red than blue. Put the transmissions through. A chorus of alien voices filled the bridge. Different species, different languages, but all carrying the same message. Help us. Please help us. Chen listened to the desperate pleas and made her decision. Signal Earth Command, she ordered. Request immediate reinforcement. Full fleet mobilization. Ma'am? Park asked. Chen gestured to the galactic display. We've just announced to the entire galaxy that humanity is willing to fight for others. That makes us responsible for following through. She activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is Admiral Chen. We're about to head home for resupply and reinforcement. But this isn't the end of our mission. It's the beginning. On the screen, the red markers seem to pulse like warning beacons. The galaxy is full of species that need help. And apparently, we're the ones crazy enough to provide it. So get some rest, repair your ships, and say goodbye to your families. Because when we come back out here, we're not just representing humanity anymore. Chen looked out at the stars, thinking about all the civilizations out there facing impossible odds. We're representing hope. 6 months later, the 4th, 5th, and 6th human expeditionary fleets arrived in the Zephyrian system. 600 ships carrying the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built, and crews trained specifically for fighting the Void Hunters. But more importantly, they carried something else. The knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, there were people worth fighting for. The human expansion into the galaxy had begun not through conquest or exploration, but through an accidental distress call and the simple human inability to ignore someone in need. And across the stars, in systems where Void Hunter fleets had terrorized populations for generations, new hope began to spread. The humans were coming. The galaxy would never be the same.